Ethan Carter had never believed in love at first sight. To him, love was messy, unpredictable, and something he'd locked away in a part of his life he didn't care to revisit. As the head of Carter Enterprises, his schedule left no room for romance anyway. Deals, boardrooms, flights, and deadlines, that was his reality. But life, as always, had its way of throwing him into situations he couldn't predict. It all started with his sister, Amelia. Amelia was everything Ethan was not: warm, vibrant, endlessly curious. She had always been his anchor, the person who reminded him that family mattered more than the empire he was building. And now, she was getting married. The wedding was set to be a grand affair, a gathering of high society, family friends, and business allies. For Amelia, it was about love. For Ethan, it was about appearances. And that's where the problem began. "Ethan," Amelia said one evening, her voice echoing from his phone as he sat in his penthouse office, staring at a skyline that glittered against the night. "You can't show up alone. You know how people talk." "I don't care what they say," Ethan replied, his tone clipped. He hated gossip. He hated the way people whispered about his personal life when it was none of their business. Amelia sighed, a sound he had heard countless times growing up when he was being too stubborn. "You don't care, but I do. This is my wedding, Ethan. I want you there, but I also want you to look happy. You're my only brother, and I can't have you sitting alone at the family table with everyone whispering that the great Ethan Carter can't hold down a relationship." He rubbed the back of his neck, frustrated. "What do you want me to do? Magically conjure a girlfriend?" "Not a girlfriend," Amelia said sweetly, "a wife." Ethan froze. "Excuse me, not a real wife," she hurried to explain, laughing. "A fake one. Just someone to play the part for the weekend. Smile for the photos. Dance with you. You know, make it look like you're not the cold-hearted workaholic everyone assumes you are." Ethan leaned back in his chair. The idea was insane, risky. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized it solved a problem he hadn't admitted out loud. The Carter family name carried weight, and at events like this, appearances mattered. Investors, board members, and rivals would be there. Showing up alone would only fuel the rumors about his personal life. A fake wife. Temporary. Harmless. Practical. Still, he hated the idea of pretending. He hated games. But Amelia's happiness meant more to him than his pride. "I'll think about it," he said at last. "Good," Amelia replied with satisfaction. "Because I already have someone in mind." 2 days later, Ethan found himself in a quiet cafe Amelia loved. He arrived early, as he always did, scanning the room for the mysterious woman his sister thought suitable for this ridiculous charade. And then he saw her. The world seemed to stop, just for a moment. She stood by the window, sunlight pouring over her like she belonged in a painting. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and there was something graceful in the way she carried herself, as though the chaos of the world didn't touch her. But it wasn't her beauty that struck Ethan, it was recognition. He knew her, not well, not intimately. But he remembered. It had been nearly a year ago, at a charity gala he'd attended reluctantly. He had been slipping out early, bored by the small talk and shallow smiles, when he'd seen her in the courtyard. She had been sitting alone, sketching something in a worn notebook, completely unaware of the glittering world inside. Their eyes had met for the briefest moment before someone called her away. He hadn't even learned her name. But she had stayed in his mind far longer than he cared to admit. And now, she was here. "Ethan," Amelia's voice broke through his thoughts as she appeared at his side. "This is Lily." Lily. She turned, and their eyes met again. For a moment, Ethan forgot why he was there at all. "Mr. Carter," Lily said politely, offering her hand. Her voice was calm, steady, though her eyes revealed curiosity. "Ethan," he corrected, taking her hand. It was warm, and he released it a second too late. They sat down, Amelia chattering happily about wedding details and how Lily was perfect for the role. But Ethan barely heard. His attention was on Lily. The way she listened, the way she smiled politely, the way she didn't seem the least bit intimidated by him, unlike most people he met. "So," Lily said at last, turning to him directly, "Amelia thinks you need a wife." Her straightforwardness caught him off guard. He almost laughed. "A fake one," he clarified. She tilted her head slightly. And you're comfortable with that? No, he admitted honestly. But I don't see another option. Silence stretched between them for a beat. Then Lily smiled faintly. Well, at least you're honest. That's rare. The agreement was simple. Lily would attend the wedding, play the part of his devoted wife, and in return, Amelia would cover any expenses Lily might need for the weekend. Ethan had offered to pay her directly, but Lily had refused firmly. I'm not for sale, she'd said, her eyes steady on his. It unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. Most people wanted something from him: money, power, influence. But Lily, she wanted nothing. As the days passed, Ethan found himself caught between practicality and distraction. On paper, Lily was perfect for the role, poised, intelligent, and kind. But the more time he spent with her in preparation for the wedding, the more he realized he was treading dangerous ground. Because she wasn't just someone playing a part. She was the woman he couldn't forget. By the time the wedding weekend arrived, Ethan was already on edge. The ceremony was set at a sprawling countryside estate, a place that looked like it belonged in a movie. Guests had begun arriving, dressed to impress, carrying both smiles and whispers. And then there was Lily, walking by his side as though she belonged there. Every head turned, every camera flashed. Ethan was used to being the center of attention, but this time, it wasn't just him people noticed. It was her. Lily slipped her arm through his, smiling up at him like they'd been married for years. And for one reckless second, Ethan almost believed it. Almost. But then he remembered. This was temporary. Fake. A performance. So why did it feel so real? The estate buzzed with music, laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Amelia's wedding had drawn everyone who mattered in their circle. Relatives with sharp tongues, investors with sharper eyes, and distant acquaintances who came only to measure themselves against the Carters. Ethan had been in this world his whole life, but tonight felt different. Because tonight, Lily walked beside him. She wore a midnight blue dress that shimmered under the lights, simple but striking. Every time she smiled at a guest, he felt a strange tug in his chest, like something he had buried long ago was waking up. Relax, Lily whispered as they entered the ballroom, her hand brushing his arm in a way that looked casual but wasn't. People are watching. I am relaxed, Ethan muttered, though his jaw was tight. She gave him a knowing glance. You have that CEO face on. The one that makes you look like you're about to fire someone. Despite himself, Ethan laughed quietly. That's the first time anyone's told me that. Then you need more honest people around you, she replied lightly, her eyes scanning the room. They moved through the crowd, playing their parts. He introduced her as his wife. She leaned in just close enough, smiled at just the right moments, and charmed everyone she met. To outsiders, they were seamless. Perfect. But inside, Ethan was restless. Because this wasn't just an act anymore. The first test came during dinner. They were seated at the head table, facing hundreds of guests. Cameras flashed, and Ethan was keenly aware of every eye on them. Then Amelia stood to toast her husband-to-be, her words heartfelt and emotional. When she spoke about love, the kind that finds you when you least expect it, Ethan felt Lily shift beside him. Her hand brushed his under the table. Not intentional, he told himself. Just a coincidence. But his pulse quickened anyway. He glanced at her. She wasn't looking at him. Her attention was fixed on Amelia, but there was something in her eyes, something vulnerable, as though Amelia's words struck a chord. The urge to ask her what she was thinking nearly consumed him. But he held back. This wasn't real. He couldn't forget that. Later, during the reception, couples filled the dance floor. Amelia and her new husband swayed to music that wrapped around the room like a spell. Guests followed, laughter spilling as they joined in. Go, Lily said softly, nudging Ethan. He frowned. Go where? To the dance floor. People are waiting for you to make a move. He shook his head. I don't dance. Of course you don't, she teased. You probably schedule your fun, too. He arched a brow. You think I can't. I think you're terrified, she countered, her eyes glinting with mischief. For a man used to control, Ethan didn't know why her words challenged him so much. But before he could overthink, he rose and held out his hand. Prove me wrong, Mrs. Carter. Her lips curved into a smile. She slipped her hand into his, and together they stepped into the glow of the dance floor. At first, he was stiff, moving with calculated precision. But Lily guided him gently, her touch light yet steady. And then something shifted. The music faded into the background, the crowd disappeared, and it was just the two of them. Her eyes met his, unguarded, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt something crack open inside him. Not control, not calculation, something real. When the song ended, applause rose around them. But Ethan barely noticed. His world had already changed. The illusion shattered the next morning. Ethan was making his way through the gardens, coffee in hand, when he overheard voices behind a hedge. "I still can't believe Ethan Carter finally brought someone," a man said with a laugh. "He didn't bring her. She's a fake," another replied in a hushed tone. Ethan froze. "What do you mean? I have a friend who knows her. She's a freelance illustrator, barely making rent. Amelia arranged the whole thing to save face. Carter doesn't have a wife. He hired one." The men laughed, their voices cruel. Ethan's grip tightened on the cup until it cracked. He turned the corner sharply, but the men quickly scattered, pretending they hadn't said anything. Rage burned in his chest. Not at Lily, but at himself. At the fact that people would use her name like that, drag her into gossip because of him. He had wanted to protect Amelia's happiness, but instead he had put Lily in the line of fire. And worse, he realized, the thought of her being hurt mattered to him more than it should. That evening, he found her sitting alone by the fountain outside the estate. She was sketching again, the same notebook he remembered from the gala in her lap. "You sketch when you're nervous," Ethan said quietly as he approached. She looked up, surprised. "How do you know that?" "I saw you once before," he admitted. "At a charity gala. You were sitting outside, drawing. I never forgot." For a long moment, Lily didn't reply. Then she closed the notebook softly. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because this, whatever we're doing," he exhaled, frustrated. "It doesn't feel fake anymore. At least not to me." Her eyes softened, but her voice was steady. "Ethan, we agreed this was temporary. A performance. You don't want complications." "Maybe I was wrong." His voice was low, raw. "Maybe complications are the only thing I've ever needed." The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of the fountain. Then Lily shook her head gently. "Don't say things you'll regret tomorrow." She stood, ready to leave, but Ethan caught her hand. "Lily." She looked back at him, her eyes shining with something he couldn't quite name. Longing, fear, hope. And then she pulled away, leaving him standing alone in the dark. The wedding weekend ended, and guests departed. But Ethan couldn't shake the emptiness that settled over him once Lily was gone. Back in the city, his office felt colder, the skyline emptier. Meetings blurred together. Numbers no longer thrilled him. Because every time he looked up, he half expected to see Lily walking in with that quiet confidence of hers. He tried to tell himself it was just an act, that what happened between them wasn't real. But deep down, he knew better. And then, fate intervened. 2 weeks later, Ethan attended a small gallery opening hosted by one of his company's partners. He was halfway through the event when he froze. On the far wall hung a series of illustrations, detailed, emotional, alive. And there, in neat handwriting, was the name of the artist. Lily Harper. She stood nearby, speaking with a group of guests, her cheeks flushed with excitement. For the first time, she looked like she belonged entirely to her own world, not borrowed for someone else's story. Ethan's chest tightened. He realized then that he didn't just want her as a part of a performance. He wanted her in his life. For real. He waited until the crowd around her thinned before stepping forward. "So this is what you've been hiding," he said softly. She turned, startled, but then her lips curved into a smile. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you, apparently." He gestured to her work. "You're incredible." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. "This is your world, Ethan. Mine is different." "Then let me be part of yours," he said firmly. "No pretense. No contracts. Just us." For a long moment, Lily searched his face, as if testing whether to believe him. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt utterly vulnerable. Finally, she smiled faintly. "You don't give up easily, do you?" "Not when it matters." She laughed softly, the sound easing something in him. And then, without another word, she stepped closer. In the middle of the gallery, surrounded by her art and strangers who barely noticed them, Ethan Carter kissed the woman he had once thought was only a temporary solution. But she was never temporary. She was the one he couldn't forget. And now, he never would.